I got 5 more spicy Yugi Kaiba format texts for you.
Dual sauce, extra sauce. Hit that subscribe.
Hey everyone, this is Jesse from the Janjo Zone. So, not that long ago, I released a video talking about 5 spicy texts in the Yugi Kaiba 2002 Yu-Gi-Oh format. And there's a lot of great cards that I gotta talk about. I even had some honorable mentions on there that won't be included in this new list. But going off of that, there's a lot of people that were telling me about other texts that they were interested in. And I thought to myself, yeah, that's kind of interesting to talk about. So let's just talk about them. And here are the 5 next spicy texts in the Yugi Kaiba format. Wait. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, because that helps me upload more videos and know that you like content like this. So at number 5, this is kind of a weird one. It's more of a conceptual card at the very least, and that is the Mysterious Puppeteer. This guy is kind of a cool looking card. I always like the purple robe and the little mysterious puppet he's got. He's a very mysterious looking card. So he's got 1,000 attack and 1,500 defense. Warrior Earth 4 stars, and his effect reads, each time you or your opponent normal summons or flip summons a monster, increase your life points by 500 points. So he's not the best card. This list was kind of stretching it because I don't think I can make any possible list after this one, honestly, because most of the other cards in the format are just way more generic. But Mysterious Puppeteer, he has a neat effect. He's one of the few other effect monsters that never sees any play, because let's face it, he's really weak. He doesn't have any high attack. His defense isn't the worst, but it's certainly not the best. It certainly can't block you from most attacks. But if your opponent only has like defensive monsters, then Puppeteer will help you out in that regard. But his effect lets you gain 500 life points for every monster that is summoned, barred from special summoning, which doesn't really happen that often in this format. So if you're playing some sort of stall or defensive build, he could potentially help you get to that timer, maybe, or get you that slight advantage. Again, I'm really stretching out for Mysterious Puppeteer. I think there is maybe a potential with him with some sort of defensive build, but yeah, that's why he's number 5. So number 4 is a very weird, interesting card I think a lot of people know about, a lot of people have even tried out, and that's Ultimate Offering. You don't really see it in that many decks, but let's read its effect. It's a continuous trap card, and during your main phase or your opponent's battle phase, you can pay 500 life points. Immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon or set 1 monster. Now this card is currently on the ban list, and I don't see it ever coming back, honestly, because that continuous extra summon is so powerful. Because it was one thing if it was like a Scrap Iron Scarecrow where you have to reflip it. No, it's a continuous trap, so you can keep activating it. However, when the card first came out, it was actually errated differently. Yeah, the effect I just read was a different errata. See, the original one was just says a turn player can pay 500 to normal summon or set a monster. And that is very generic. It's actually a very bizarre ruling, because there have been different rulings in the TCG and the OCG, and Konami has even said different rulings, and it's just really confusing, because can you do it more than once per turn? Is it depending on the phase? Can both players use it because it just says a player? It really depends on how you read the card, because I've looked deep into this, where some rulings are like, hey, only player who controls it can use it, because it doesn't specifically say your opponent. It just says a player, which can be translated as it's just a bad translation. It really only means a player, as in who controls the card. And I kind of want to lean towards that because it makes more sense. But it also kind of balances the card out in that regard, because both players can summon a monster. Though all the future errata is really trying to push towards this in regards to it's just you who can use it, and it's only during your main phase, and it's only during your opponent's battle phase. And yes, you can use it more than once. So if you go with that regard, it's a very powerful card because you can really swarm the field a lot easier. And it's not special summoning, you're still normal summoning monsters, so the cards can still get trap hold with Ultimate Offering. And it's a great way to really help out with tribute decks or just beatdown decks, stall decks, really any deck in general. Ultimate Offering would be great. But I feel like most rulings lean towards both players can use it. And I really wish we got a really official 100% confirmed standing on the original errata. I don't know if we'll ever actually get that. It just depends on the judge, depends on who's holding the tournament, of if they're using that or if they're just using future erratas of cards. But Ultimate Offering definitely has a lot of potential depending on how it's played, and it'd be interesting to see what would happen if more players adopt its fixed errata, or at least in the regards that only the player that controls the card can use it, because it would also make a lot more sense for players to run cards like Remove Trap instead of just citing it out for against Dragon Capture Jar. So yeah, Ultimate Offering is a very bizarre card. I honestly could talk about it way more, but we gotta move on to number 3. So number 3, we got Hane Hane. I've talked to someone on my Discord at the launch base about this, and Hane Hane is interesting. I feel like you see him more in decks that people don't really know what they're doing. Not to say that they're playing bad, but that they just think it's better than it actually is. But Hane Hane does have some use. I think Hane Hane is really good as a side card against the tribute decks, against the soul control decks, because returning a tributed monster to your opponent's hand is actually a pretty good way to get rid of them, because you don't have to destroy them, they can't monster reborn, they would have to find another way to bring it out, use more resources for that. But otherwise, Hane Hane, yeah, he only really works if you have really good tempo, if you have really good momentum going in the game. Can return monsters to your hand, so if your opponent has already normal summon and they have one monster, or they have one monster on the field regularly, then after that, they're left wide open, which means you can just go straight for an attack. It's an extra monster to sort of get rid of cards like Man-Eater Bug, can get rid of other monsters, but Hane Hane doesn't get rid of them for good. Half the time your opponent can just resummon them. Honestly, more than half the time they can just resummon them. But I think Hane Hane has some potential as a side deck card against certain kinds of decks. He might be good against defensive decks to get them back to your hand so you can kind of poke for more and more damage. I don't know, there's has to be more workaround with him, but it's definitely a thought to be had. And again, a lot of these cards on this list are kind of more ideas than anything. So let's move on to number 2. Number 2, this was actually mentioned in the comments of my last video, my last Spicy Tech video, and that's Grave Digger GHOUL. It's a spell card, or magic card, where you can select 2 monsters from your opponent's graveyard. These 2 monsters are removed from play for the remainder of the duel. So it's like a soul release, but only 2 monsters in your opponent's graveyard. And this is good if you want to avoid cards like Monster Reborn. Unfortunately, Monster Reborn can affect both graveyards, so it's very particular in getting rid of certain monsters, and you really have to play around your own graveyard for this. It would create an interesting graveyard dynamic in a game if someone wanted to play this deck that incorporated more Gravedigger's GHOUL. But it is a good way to avoid cards like, well, basically just Monster Reborn. Honestly, I don't think there's any other revival cards in this format. But the fact that Gravedigger GHOUL is really the only card that can do that sort of thing is really interesting and neat. I think I've tried out maybe one deck. But yeah, only Monster Reborn works in both players' graveyard, which really neuters Gravedigger GHOUL, but I like the concept of it. So now we're moving on to number 1. What could it possibly be? Is it the Furious Seeking? Is it Firegrass? No, 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 of course it's not. It's actually the Stern Mystic. Yeah, I want to surprise you all with this monster. I had trouble kind of picking them. I can't just pick like a Sparks or a Final Flame, and I couldn't pick any of the honorable mentions I had in my last video because I've already sort of talked about them. So Stern Mystic is the last one I could have picked, and I actually really like this card. It has 1500 attack, 1200 defense, which isn't the worst stats. 1500, take it or leave it. It's a 4-star monster, and it actually has a flip effect, like Hane Hane, flip effect monster. You don't see them too often. And his effect reads, all face down cards on the field are turned face up, and then return to the original positions. No card effects are activated when cards are turned face up. So this is really neat, because basically what you can do is that if you're playing a more defensive game and you have this card set, you can flip it, or your opponent can attack into it, which flips it, which will flip all monsters, which means you can get a lot of information on the field. And it's not just monsters, it's all cards, it's all spells and traps, which means you have a better time of deciding, hey, is there a trap hole? Are they setting a spell card? Are they setting a Wall of Illusion or a Man-Eater Bug? How do I play around that? Stern Mystic has a lot of utility in this, because there's a lot of things in this format that revolve around the guessing game with using cards like Trap Master, or perhaps an Armed Ninja, or just blind attacking into monsters, or maybe even a stop defense. But the Stern Mystic kind of plays around this and gives you at least one monster on the field to sort of defend yourself and 1500 is pretty good poke damage. People play Giant Soldier of Stone because it has 1300 attack, which is more than Mystical Elf, and despite it being susceptible to Trap Hole, 1300 is still not bad poke damage. But you have 1500 poke damage here, and sure, defense isn't high, but if your opponent is worried about attacking into that face down monster and it reveals to be a Stern Mystic, then all of a sudden they're playing a even higher guessing game, because now they really don't know what you're possibly gonna set, because it could be a Stern Mystic, but it could be a Man-Eater Bug or a Wall of Illusion. You don't know. It could be a Giant Soldier Stone. It could be anything. So that's why I really like the Stern Mystic, because he can flip every card. It's not just monsters, it's all cards. And while yes, it does reveal your own hand, metaphorically speaking, you can sort of play around that, and it gives you more information that you want to know going into your turn than your opponent does. And that's why I really like the Stern Mystic. He gives you a ton of information, and information is so valuable in Yu-Gi-Oh! I wish we saw Stern Mystic a little bit more. I don't know how people have really played with him. I think the only deck I've seen him in is Back Row Control, and that's not a very popular deck. But still, I really like the Stern Mystic, and I want to see more of him, and I'm interested to see how he kind of works out in the game. So let me know what you think about this top 5 list. Let me know if there's any other possible Yugi Kaiba format lists you'd like to see. I'm getting to that point where I don't know how much more I can make of this, because there's not too much to talk about, but we'll just have to wait and see about that. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts about this list in the comments below. Are you interested in trying some of them out? Do you have any thoughts, likes, dislikes, concerns about any of the cards? Let me know wherever you can find me. And of course, check out my Patreon, because monthly you can request a discussion for the channel. That's pretty awesome. And I also got merch. You can get some awesome Dual Sauce merch and other great things. And also feel free to talk to me on my Discord at the launch base, or at Twitter at Janjo, or just in the comments of these videos. And of course, until then, have a freaking wonderful day.